Welcome back, everyone. I'm here again with Sophie and Yerasimos. We were going to speak about the practical side of spirituality, I guess, or of there's different names, right, for what you guys do and for what I do. The spirituality, the self-growth, self-awareness.
Yeah.
The individuation process,
correct,
as well, and just becoming an individual, becoming who you were born to be, becoming the best version of yourself, and the healthiest version of yourself.
Yeah, didn't Jung say something like, you don't become fully human until the individuation is complete, right?
I mean, for Jung, that is the ultimate goal, I'll say, or process of being alive, and we're continually in it. I mean, when you're fully individuated is probably when you die, but it's a continuation process of continually like coming into more individuation.
You think so? Because sometimes I think about the individuation process maybe as kind of parallel with the idea of enlightenment. And I don't think you necessarily would need to die to become enlightened. I understand it as a possibility. I would say kind of I've met people who I think maybe they are, I don't know if enlightened is the exact word, but awake, or these like masters that, when I met my Chinese master, I call him my spiritual master. Some people don't like the word master there because of the master-slave relationship, but
yeah,
I mean it as master and student, more like teacher. When I met him, one of the things for me was, oh wow, so these people exist. I don't know if I would say enlightened is the exact word, but he was like, to put it in a certain kind of comparison, I realized he was many steps ahead of me, to a degree that was unimaginable for me before. You would read about enlightened people, about the Buddha, about Lao Tse, or about even more recent ones, I don't know, Osho, or who else? Okay, so whatever, so many, there's been so many. And it would be more like, oh yeah, these.
What makes a person enlightened?
Yeah, I don't know.
This is my question to you, because that's a word that I have my own views on, but I'm curious, like, what makes a person enlightened? The way they come across, the way they project themselves, the way they talk. I think you spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with the enlightened person. Are you in their mind to know? It's a very interesting subject. Like a lot of these people we project on, they have shadows. And so what is an enlightened person? Someone who's in touch with heaven and hell within themselves? I'd be more close to that than a person who projects that they have no issues and everything is fine and beautiful and love and light and positivity, and I'm not attached to the world, and I've dissolved into oneness with the universe. To me, that's a red flag. For me, and that's where I have some issues with some Eastern traditions, But anyways, that's just what I wanted to share on that. You can share your thoughts.
Yeah, I love that question. It's such an important question, I guess, for this new age we are moving into, because the idea of enlightenment and gurus or whatever is, and even the idea of the shadow work is becoming so present in culture in general, that eventually we're going, as a culture, to have to ask ourselves, okay, what is enlightenment? What does it mean? What are these people so-called enlightened? Are they beyond good and evil? Does morality apply? Does it not? And for me, enlightenment is kind of like an acceptance of your shadow, but it comes with with like a polishing of it, I guess. It's not, maybe, I don't know, maybe Hitler was accepting of his shadow. So would we say he was enlightened? I don't know. I wouldn't.
Definitely, I wouldn't think so based on the events of his life.
Right.
You know?
But at the same time, I don't really think he was in acceptance of his own shadow. Most likely, very much not so. But I've met people, you know, who I consider enlightened. It's like we have this one idea. Oh, an enlightened person must be this way, and we have this image of like sitting in a lotus posture and being silent all day or whatever. But I've met people that you would just cross them in the street, just regular people that you wouldn't even maybe think twice, who I consider at least awakened, if those are different terms. For some reason, I hear myself making this distinction between perhaps being awake and being enlightened, as if, I mean, I still have so much to learn. Perhaps it's the same thing, but yeah, so just regular people, everyday people that you would cross on the street, they could totally be enlightened, and you wouldn't
I
even
personally
realize.
would think the person who, an individual who doesn't need to wear all the robes and have thousands of people around them and thousands of followers on Instagram, they would be more awake and enlightened, in my opinion, than someone of that nature, you know? So I think there's a lot of charlatans out there, and we see it over and over again. If we study, we see people who have had these followings and the gurus, and then they have these shadows where they've been sociopathic and manipulative, and etc. So I have I'm just very skeptical of some of these people who put on this, they wear the costume of I'm a guru and I have all the answers, you know? I don't know. I have my issues with that. So, but that's my opinion.
Yeah.
You know?
For example, my teacher's wife, she was a very, very simple Taiwanese woman. She would make tea, and she was, when you spoke with her, you know, her energy would bring you into a calm, relaxed state. And you ask her a question, and she would always have this answer that's like, wow, where do you get this wisdom? Like, instead of answering like what anybody else would answer, she would kind of give you an answer through something else. And she was always open to like hearing you and say, oh yeah, I have that problem too. And you would look at her and you say, you don't, you're like perfect. What are you talking about? But she would be like extremely aware of her own
humanity,
even though she was by I don't know, a kind of default standard or whatever, you could say she was she had a very polished heart. Still, she didn't lose sight of this is a continuous process.
Yeah, and I think that's the key right there. I think the ability, I had a teacher in the past said about enlightenment, he's like, is the ability to dance between opposites within yourself and to hold space for the opposites, as opposed to just being like, I'm here, I've arrived, that's not never a problem, that I'm never, you know what I mean? Just the more you know about yourself, the more you embrace more of your humanity, I think that brings you closer towards that word enlightenment than repression, you know? And a lot of people project onto these people like they have all the answers because they share a small element of them, and they use the right words, and they can be very hypnotizing, you know? So that's I think something for people to be aware of.
Yeah, I think so too. Sophie, any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I come from it more in terms of like, as Yerasimos was saying, of are you still embodied in your process? Are you still sort of like grounded in humanity, of being human, of the full experience of being human at the same time as you're going into those upper states? Because to me, if you're just going into the upper states, that's fine, but that could be pushing more of that shadow like deeper instead of bringing it to the surface and becoming okay with it. I think there is that level of acceptance of one's shadow. And I would say that that's, I mean, what Jung was talking about, that's the process of individuation, is really getting so aware of oneself, the light, the dark, the in-between, and then having choice around it. So even as you're talking about your teacher's wife, her saying, you know, yeah, I know what you're talking about, and you kind of being like, well, no, because you're perfect. Well, at least she knows it of herself, of like, yeah, I think it's one of those things, we're capable of everything. We're all capable of the absolute worst atrocities as well as the absolute best atrocities, or not atrocities, the best things. So then it's like, how do we—
Those good atrocities. I love the good atrocities. Like,
yeah.
you know, killing 100 people, it's a good atrocity. Killing 1 million people, it's a bad atrocity.
Chaotic good, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. That's good.
Whatever.
Being a trickster. It's important in that, yeah.
But holding it within ourselves, I mean, even from Jung's perspective, it's like the shadow gets a bad rap a lot of the times because everyone assumes that it's just the negative parts of us. And it's not. It's everything that we're unwilling to accept about ourselves. That's
a great point.
The shadow. So the shadow is also, oh, I could be, you know, the best of the best of the best of the best, but I'm unwilling to go into that or acknowledge that or really feel that.
It holds our potential as well. It's not just the dark stuff, you know?
Exactly. So the more that we can be in touch with that, of this expansiveness of our abilities to be both the light, the dark, and in between, it's like, I think that's the process, that's the journey. And it's not, oh, I accept my shadow, therefore I can go do all of these terrible things. It's, I am aware of that within me. I'm aware of that existence, and I can choose differently. Yeah. But if someone is saying like, oh no, I'm just light and love and that's all, and I just sort of, you know, float off into the clouds of happiness every single day, then I'm going to be a little bit more skeptical and a little bit more like, okay, well, yeah, how's that going for you?
One of my mentors, Michael Tazarian, on Slave podcast and years of research, he's done a lot of work on the sage and the psychopath. There's not much that separates the two, you know. It's like the sage understands the psycho. He understands the potential that exists with him, but makes a different choice, as opposed to repressing it and not acknowledging it. And so any teaching, any teacher that leaves consciousness at the door, that leaves psychology out of it, is a red flag for me. And someone who uses like lofty, highbrow spiritual ideas without a grounding in human psychology, it's not for me. Now, it might be for some other people, but that's just not for me. And through my life experience, it's a red flag for me.
So I don't want to stray too much from the going into the practical thing, but talking about this stuff for me is like, I just love it.
I love it too. And it is practical though. This stuff is really practical because it's like you an individual, when we're in this world and this work and everyone's like, I have the answers, I have the truth. You need to build psychic immunity. That's the real immunity. You need to have discernment.
Discernment, exactly.
Okay. And you build discernment by knowing yourself on the deepest levels. If you know you have the trickster and the manipulative and the dishonest and the dickhead and the asshole inside of you, okay, you smell it, you sniff it out. I know the part of me that can be manipulative. I know the part of me that can be vindictive and can do things, but I make a conscious choice not to live from that. But when I see someone around that's operating in a certain way, I go, I got you. It's the person who doesn't know a certain part within themselves that gets taken advantage of by these people.
Yeah, people that end up in cults. I love that phrase. It takes one to know one. So even for the good stuff, you know, we project all this shine onto other people, and it's like, well, how do you know that he is amazing? Maybe it's because you know that you are amazing and you don't want to see it, so you say, oh no, it's not me, it's him.
Very often.
And there is this...
I have a family member who identified as being such a honest and principled person. Like, I'm so honest, I'm so principled. So they weren't maybe in touch with the part of them that could be dishonest. And so what happened? They got taken advantage of many times over. So, you know, this is the work. This is the integration of the shadow. This is the process of individuation. This is about becoming more whole, knowing yourself.
I think that's what happens in is the word in like orthodox, or very like, I don't know if that's the correct word, very exoteric, or very like I don't know the exact word, kind of like this, I don't mean any disrespect, but this kind of very evangelistic way of thinking, you know, about your religion. You are like, oh yes, Jesus is the best, and I am just like Jesus, or just like the whatever, and you sense in those people. But do you even have a clue about your dark side, or are you just like putting it under the rug of this figure that you are projecting outside? And at the same time, there's this other aspect that I would like to bring up, which is this subtle point. You know, earlier I mentioned morality. Sometimes with people that I would consider perhaps as being enlightened, sometimes I see this aspect. For example, let's think about like the Zen teacher, that you're like, you're meditating and maybe you fall asleep, the classical story, and they whack you on the head with a stick. It's not that that guy you should sue him and he should go to prison for violence. Is that for some reason he's so connected to the Tao in that moment, he's so connected to his essence, that that the universe whacks you with a stick through him, rather than his ego being in charge of that decision. Like, oh, I'm offended that you fall asleep in the meditation that I was teaching you, so whack. No, it's more like the universe knows what it needs to do at every point, and it sometimes can kind of possess people through I guess through the collective unconscious. I don't know the exact.
So you're saying that a person doesn't have free will?
Well, no, what I'm saying is that we do and we don't. It's like, I think everything is like the two things at once. You know, we have this small personality, but at the same time, we are also the soul or the spirit, like in looking at this body in third person, kind of, and it's like we are living in two worlds at the same time, and trying to merge those two and being present, you know, enough in both. I think that's like, maybe that's part of the process of individuation, or another way of expressing it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I totally hear what you said on the second part. On the first part, it's hard for me to think that someone's not going to know that they're about to hit someone over the head with a thing. Like, that feels like unconscious behavior to me, not conscious, not enlightened. But again, I'm just basing off your example, and I'd like to play devil's advocate sometimes, you know.
I think it's possible.
Like, I would think that's abusive. If I was in a meditation and someone hit me over the head, I would walk right out and be like, this is not the teacher for me. Like, this is like, why are you hitting me over the head? Like, my body knew that I needed to take a sleep. My body has a higher intelligence and wanted to take a nap in that moment.
I think that sometimes we need, it's very hard, because it's like balancing the line of what's correct and what's not. It's like, I guess it's very important where the actions come from, right? So in human design, we have these two sides of the self, or of each person. And I guess one of them is more connected to what we could call source, or God, or the universe, or nature, or something like that. The other one is kind of one step removed. Maybe it's more like the mind. And like the other day, I realized I tried to get to a point, and I go to something else, but I think
but this is a good conversation. This is a good conversation. We unpack things, you know, how we use words, how we tell stories, how we use language is very important and very practical, you know, because in the context of what you said, it's because you're in a meditation, you're projecting that this teacher has a certain level of power. And so him hitting you over the head, it's okay. But what if you were in the park and some random homeless person or some random came over and the same thing was happening and hit you over their head? Would you think, oh, the universe is working through him? You know, what if a father spanked a child? Oh, the universe is working through the child, through the father. You know what I'm saying? So it's important to unpack this stuff, and this is part of what I do.
I think it's not an absolute thing. You know, it's not like every time X action happens, it goes into this bag, and it's more like this thing about the intention behind it. You know, I think that gives a certain coat or a certain, I don't know, aura of a different flavor of the thing. It's not the same if
it has a different projection field.
I think so. Like the idea of the guy hitting you with a stick, or for example, one that broke my heart was, I don't know if you know Muji. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
Okay, he's like the coolest guru ever for me, because he's this black guy with rastas, with dreadlocks. I mean, he's from Jamaica, so he's like extremely cool. But he's this non-duality teacher from the kind of the Ramana Maharshi, so Hinduism type of branch of things. And he was amazing, and he still is. But at some point, I started reading that there were these accusations of women towards him, and him kind of using his position to like seduce them or to be with them, and even other people like
not surprising
that would say he made them eat meat, stuff like that. So kind of weird kind of stuff. I don't know how to call it, but so not casting a judgment on his situation, just trying to look at it like from outside. So if somebody was in a position of like being a guru, and he had sex with one of his devotees or students or whatever, I don't think that's necessarily always incorrect. I understand the dynamics of, yeah, but he's in a power position and she's like maybe vulnerable to it or whatever. But maybe she's not vulnerable to it, and maybe he's not abusing that position. Maybe they are in a kind of balanced place where what's happening is even divine, and even because it must be amazing to have sex with a person that's so free, let's say, of his mind or of her mind. So I understand there is a place for those kinds of things without them necessarily being absolutely always wrong. I don't know if I'm giving the best examples, but they are exactly like I say in the very in the limit between what's correct and what's not. I think that sometimes it might look horrible from outside. You know, for example, we read in these sacred texts from thousands of years ago, when the world was very different, humanity was very different. They go to religious war, right? And in this war, they kill people. And for some reason, we understand that, yeah, okay, but in that context, and with a certain particular kind of consciousness, killing somebody is all right, it's correct, I see it kind of like the Tao itself moving the pieces, you know. And just one very short final story to make this point, to try to make this point. There's this story, I think it comes from Islam, that this guy is in a holy war, okay, and he's fighting, he's killing his enemies, etc. And eventually he reaches one of his enemies is on the floor, and he's going to throw down his sword to kill him. And when he's about to do that, the guy from the floor spits on him from the floor, and, right? He spits on his face. And the guy pauses for a moment, puts down his sword, and walks away. Then eventually the battle ends. And when this guy is captured, he asks to see this guy who didn't kill him. So the guy with the sword, he comes to talk to him, and the prisoner says, "What happened? You were about to kill me and you didn't. Why? What happened?" "It's because you spat on me. And I knew at that moment that if I killed you, I would be killing you for the wrong reasons. That's why I didn't kill you." And that's kind of the story. I think it kind of talks about the point I was trying to make. What do you guys think?
I mean, sure. I mean, I just don't align with, I mean, there's two parties involved, free will, whether it's a guru and someone going to see a guru, but immoral, unethical behavior, you know, taking advantage of your position, I don't support. And then you use the term that people use often in spiritual circles. I'm not going to pass judgment, but judgment's discernment. And we need that. We need our minds to be able to slice through the bullshit. We need our minds to be able to discern what is right and what is wrong. And this is the issue I have with certain Gnostic and ascetic traditions, to transcend the mind, transcend the body. I don't think they're spiritual paths, and I call them out when I see them. And that's just my view. People don't need to agree in it, but I'm never going to defend someone who takes advantage of their position of power. And at the same time, I also am not going to not blame the individual. They're both making choices to engage in something, and maybe they'll learn something from it. But when you started the story saying this guy was really great and cool, but then there's all these accusations and things against him, like, this is just typical in that world. It's typical, and I see it over and over and over again, these people that call themselves gurus. And I would tell people, walk your own path, get a little bit of knowledge, sure, but do the inner journey. You project all this energy on these gurus and these people that very often are sociopathic and psychopathic. But you know what? Sociopathic and psychopathic people, they're not out there killing people. They're the sweetest, kindest people. They're the ones that come across as the most enlightened people. And that's what people don't understand. And it's part of my mission is to wake some people, not you. I mean, you're a level-headed, intelligent, rational person, but it's important for people that are on these paths and reading these books and these texts to understand what they're dealing with. Okay. You're dealing with psychic vampires, and the psychic vampires sometimes come across as being, in the beginning, especially, the most genuine, kind, loving, sweet people. And very often the opposite is true. So, I don't have any tolerance for immoral and ethical behavior in that regards. And I don't say this as someone who's completely immoral. I'm not a perfect person. I mess up. I'm immoral. I think impure thoughts, so yes, it's part of some grander picture and the lessons that they have for each other. But I have no tolerance for that kind of behavior, especially in certain communities. It should be called out. It's unethical. And every single week, there's a new article of some guru that's being called out for manipulative, sociopathic behavior. And that should be a sign, and that should tell. Now, that's not everyone, but a lot of cases it is. Anyways, those are my thoughts. And I appreciate your thoughts.
Yeah, I appreciate yours too. I think in part, one of the points where I think we maybe are disagreeing is that I think, okay, so if these people are growing spiritually and going to the next step in their journey, but they are doing it through an interaction that is kind of stinky, who am I to judge that? I mean, I wouldn't want that for myself, just like you say. I wouldn't necessarily agree that that's all right, but I don't know, I'm kind of in this place where I can understand that some people need difficult lessons or difficult situations or experiences in order to understand a lesson. And in this life, they would not understand the lesson unless they had a hard experience. So
but you can hold both. You can hold both. I agree with what you just said 100%. Like, shit, people get what they deserve sometimes. People have to experience these lessons, and I can sit there and go, that's unethical behavior.
All right. Yeah.
I think you can hold both personally. But Sophie, what do you have to say?
And I would say that even in unethical, behavior, even as we were talking earlier about like the victim mentality and stuff like that, there's still that part of, as you were saying, there's two people involved, people making their own decisions, and then they have to, deal with whatever the fallout is or whatever, comes from that and things like that. The part for me is I've sort of gotten to a place where now, if there's ever somebody who is putting themselves up on a pedestal or thinking of themselves in that guru situation, that arena, or projecting that out there, then what is their teachings in terms of, for me, if anyone ever says like, you can only get this information through me, or you can only become enlightened through me, or I'm, the gateway to whatever, immediate red flag. I'm not going to follow that person. I'm not going to really, go with what they're saying. For me, as long as somebody is bringing the power back into myself, I think that's the key of a real teacher, is always directing the person back into that. You have all of the information, you have all of the resources that you need. You have the connection to spirit within yourself. It's not through anyone else. It's not through anything else at all. It's you. So if ever there's a teacher saying, I'm the way, no, I don't believe that. I'm the way. I'm the way for me. You're the way for you. Yerasimos is the way for Yerasimos. We all have our own journeys and our paths, and how we're going to navigate those, how we're going to utilize all of the experiences that we've had in our lives is up to us. Now, I have people that I'll go to. I have, people that
teachers, guides, people
yeah,
that
something like that I take information from. But then I think it gets tricky if I start thinking like, oh, but you have what I want, or it's through you that I'm going to get it. Or even as you were saying, like if I sleep with someone who has gotten to a certain level, how amazing that would be. I'm there, so I still have to do the work. I don't think it's like we get to bypass our own things through others. And I think anyone who believes that they can do that for others is putting themselves in a dangerous position of, as we're saying, taking advantage of people and being unethical in their ways of interacting with people and utilizing that. I mean, I think that is a manipulative technique of I'm the way. I just think it always has to come back to the individual.
And what about Jesus is the way? What about this idea of the Christ
so again, I think there's teachings. I think there are teachings that one can take. I think there's ideas that one can take and one can aspire to and want to embody or want to be more, exhibit more. And at the same time, it's not through Jesus that I'm going to become enlightened. It's through delving into my own journey of self-awareness.
Because I understand that at the point how people, let's say that this was literally how it happened, just for the sake of argument, that at the point in time, him saying that, people who understood that he was being literal would have this idea, oh yeah, he thinks he is the way. But if you were to look at him as an enlightened person, if this was a person, just if you were to look at it that way, you could understand, as I know you guys can, okay, so this guy is like, it's not his ego that is saying, I am the way, me, my ego. He's actually a mouthpiece for the flow of the universe, for the Tao, and he's actually saying that is, by saying it's through me, he's actually saying it's through you, but me, who am I talking about? Am I talking about this first person experience, flesh and bone and mind thing, or am I talking about me in a more third or whatever higher perspective? So he would be maybe in the normal sense doing something immoral, and that's why people were maybe angry at him because of saying that. But those who could have the ears to hear would have realized, no, he's actually talking about our higher self, or even higher than that, about the source of everything. And he's saying, I am the way, meaning this higher thing, which is the same in me as it is in you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those.
Talking about Jesus is a whole nother conversation. But I mean, that's just the historical Jesus. Who was he? There's many different scholars and people who have gotten into this. We had Ralph Ellis on our podcast. It was a 3-hour epic show on the biblical stories and the real history of Jesus. And so, these writings, where do they come from? The Bible, much of the Bible is propaganda, Roman propaganda. Yeah. So, there's great lessons in there as well. So that's a whole nother subject. And I don't know. I mean, I guess each person has to take the teachings and how do they translate them in what way. Different people are going to have different interpretations of that statement. I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the light. So but here we are, all we're having conversations, and all we can very often with a lot of this stuff that happened a very long time ago, we speculate, we speculate. But what Sophie said is I agree with 100%. It's an individual, like the deep work is an individual path. We can get some guides along the way and some teachings and stuff, but ultimately we have to do the work. Even when you take something like human design, great, okay, cool, like you have human design, but now what? What are you going to do with it?
And even as you're saying that with Jesus, the teachings, and that's what I meant by, you can take the teachings, you can take these things to aspire to, or these things to interpret, and it's still that individual process in terms of, as you're saying, some people will take it like, oh, I go through Jesus to get to God or enlightenment. Other people will understand that it's my journey through myself to get to God, so, or to experience whatever. So it comes down to that personal interpretation. And then that's where the personal responsibility comes in as well, and how you're going to utilize it, how you're going to embody that, how it's going to be lived through you.
Yeah. I think any teaching that allows a person to know themselves on a deeper level, love themselves, embrace more of who they are, and live a moral life, I'm cool with, like wherever it comes from. But if it brings you further away from yourself, if it gives you a greater shadow, if it represses more material, if it makes you more imbalanced,
it disempowers in any way.
If it disempowers you, I'm not for, So a person can literally go out and observe nature, and that literally can be the most impactful thing. They don't need any books. All they need to do is use awareness and pay attention. And that could be the most powerful thing. So again, it's up to the individual. Some people, they love some of these ancient texts. Some people, they're like, read one book by Jung and they're like, holy shit, this rocked my world. I say, take what works, leave what doesn't. Yeah. But the proof is in the pudding. How are you living your life? How do you feel about yourself when you look in the mirror? Do you feel fulfilled? In human design terms, are you feeling satisfied? Do you feel like you have peace in your life if you're a manifester? Are you feeling successful if you're a projector? Are you feeling like elements of surprise in your life if you're a reflector? That binary between the self, the signature, and the not self theme is a great thing for anyone who wants to explore human design, to go, oh, well, what's a good gauge to see where I'm at in my life? Like as a generator, when I'm frustrated, I need to take a look. Maybe I need to make some different decisions. Maybe I'm saying yes to things I should say no to, and saying no to things I should say yes to, So there's no singular path towards a greater self-awareness and consciousness and becoming who you're born to be, Yeah,
exactly. I think something that's very important is from what Sophie was saying, to separate the message from the messenger and see what resonates, what sticks, and continue like doing the introspection throughout time. And okay, this message doesn't resonate anymore. Okay, I can just take it out. And from what you were saying, please remind me the point you were just making. I wanted to.
Well, I was just talking about the binary within human design between the self and the not self, the signature and the not self theme. These qualities that can give us a point of reference of where we're at in our life. You know what I mean? How are our interpersonal relationships? There's many things that we can look at to determine if the things that we're doing, and the teachers that we have, and the readings that we're doing, and the self-work that we're doing, if it's really bringing us closer to a deeper understanding of self and a deeper love of self. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, multiple paths. So I see that on the one hand, people can, sometimes we get so lost in language, that somebody's saying, no, yeah, I find this through Jesus. He understands what he's saying in a way that's different from somebody that maybe had a bad relationship with the idea of the church or of Jesus. And so he says, what, you get it out of this character from a book that's fake and that was written, blah, 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 blah. And actually the person, perhaps in his innermost understanding, he knows that when he says Jesus, he means myself, maybe, right? And somebody can hear it from the outside, and then there's like wars and fighting between the people because they are all meaning the same thing, but just saying it with different words, and the different understandings of the words that the other said causes was this thing that it triggers the other one, and then wars and generational trauma for everybody.
This is why communication and language is important. You know, this is how we communicate to one another. Now, of course, there's differences in languages and from place to place, and you know, but the words we use have impact, and so and how we explain things are really important. You know, so yeah.
This is a powerful conversation. Thank you guys so much.
Oh, thank you, man. I enjoy having these conversations. You know?
Yeah, like looking for ways to stretch our own understanding and the place that we're at. So just to make it very, 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 very practical, let's say, okay, so one question that I had before that maybe is again not as practical, but maybe it is. Is healing, what is the relationship between healing and crying?
Okay.
Because let's say if you don't reach that point of crying, have you healed? Or are there other just as valid ways of, or maybe the question is healing and release, perhaps?
Release, I don't think always equals healing. You know, always, depending on the, like, or I guess crying too. Now, we're both students of Peter Levine's work, somatic experiencing. So sometimes you don't need to go into the story and have deep emotional release in order to have healing. You know, there could be a release of sympathetic, of energy that's been stuck in the body that can really impact a person. And then from that moment on, change their day-to-day, how they view themselves, how they operate. You know, their health can heal too. They can have maybe a chronic issue that resolves itself. So that's my thought. Sophie, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think that release necessarily equals healing. I think that, like, there's a lot of, or at least what I was brought up with, and especially in the beginning of my trainings and stuff, a lot of it was release work, like emotional release work of like cry and scream and punch a pillow and all of that. And I think that can be helpful. And I think sometimes it depends on how it's used. So it could be just, oh, I'm letting a little bit of the steam out of the pot, but I'm not actually turning off the fire. I'm not actually stopping the pot from boiling. I'm just releasing a little bit of the pressure, putting the lid back on. And now the same thing is going to happen. And so you get into this cycle where it's just happening over and over and over again. So then I would say that healing, actual healing, is where you find the knob on the stove and you turn it off and the pot stops continually getting to that point of boiling over where you need to release this pressure. So then it's, again, like as Yerasimos was saying, like going into those deeper places within us. Okay, what is the core wound of this? Where is this coming from? Getting to that. I don't think that necessarily means crying. I think that there's a million different ways that we release that. There's tremors in the body, you know, even different in the meridian system, different organs, different systems will release differently. Like the kidneys actually equalize through laughter. So if some people go into laughter fits, and it's like, that's integration for them, that's healing. So for me, it would be more of the movement of energy, but coming from that core place. So not just the releasing of the energy and I mean, maybe you'll feel better for a few days, a week, a month, even a year or whatever. But if you're not getting to those core places, it's just going to happen again. So I wouldn't say that that's true healing. I would say that it's when you get to those places where it's trapped in the body, where it's trapped in the psyche in a certain way, and you untangle whatever it was, how that got put in there, and then you relate to it completely differently.
Yeah. I think when your behavior changes and your view of yourself and your view of the things that have happened to you really shift, and you can notice it, it's embodied. It's not just an intellectual thing. Like, oh my God, like normally that thing, or that the person says that thing, I always get triggered, but now I'm not triggered. I think you start really noticing like things that were a certain way are no longer a certain way. It's like, I use this analogy a lot, where Neo in the Matrix, when they're shooting the bullets and he's just like, it's that life gives you bullets and you're able to dance with them, as opposed to get shot by them and like triggered and go all over the place. I just think your nervous system, you can feel it. You can feel when there's real healing. It's more sustainable. It's more permanent, as opposed to like, just like something short term, and I'm an advocate of people being able to release and cry and stuff. But if the pattern, some people have that pattern where they're just crying all the time, but nothing in their life changes. They still get into the same relationships. They still do the same thing. You know what I mean? So again, like I said before, the proof is in the pudding. Like you could look at your life to see if whatever you're doing is working. And if it's not, then you need to make adjustments.
Yeah, because you can get really addicted. I mean, there can be addiction to the drama, to the, I'm crying my eyes out, that kind of thing. And it can be in that pattern where that's what feels good. And that's what, drives it, versus the getting to the deep root, which I don't think always necessarily has to do with crying. I think it can release in various ways.
I'm curious your thoughts on this, Rafa, because I know you're involved with a lot of different things.
Well, I really love what you guys shared, especially that thing. Sophie, I think you said you used, I heard the word release and you used the word integration. So when you pointed that out, it kind of clicked for me how releasing, it's something that goes outside, whereas integration is coming back inside. And I guess I used to understand this as release being related at least to healing, but sometimes it's like release to me feels more like on the one hand it could be like, that's the thing that needed to happen for this person to heal a particular area or whatever, but some more often release or for example crying feels like it's kind of this obstruction. If it was like a vein, it has the what's it called? I'm so bad with remembering medical name. Yeah, it's got like a clot or whatever, and the crying is like releasing that. But then there is the thing of, okay, what's flowing through this vein? What are, like you said, Yerasimos, what are your thoughts about yourself? What is your self-image? Okay, you cried the thing about that thing that happened in the past. Okay, but do you still carry the imprint of what you learned back there? Maybe you released and you are able to forgive the person that did something to you, but have you now changed your own self-image, or even though you've forgiven, you are still holding on to a negative view of yourself? Then that would mean that there is some acceptance or integration still needing to happen, I guess, in that system.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Even with the body work that we do, we deal with a lot of release, intense release, emotional release.
Breath
and in
work,
a lot of ways,
right?
That helps people. It helped me. I remember getting deep body work and then for some reason weeping and heaving and my body for like 20 minutes, and that transformed my life. So it can be really powerful, and it's not always, because we all know those people who just cry all the time. Like that's just the thing. And
or in healing experiences, aiming for the crying.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, but I didn't. Or they take ayahuasca. Oh yeah, but I didn't vomit, so I don't know. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to expel something. Maybe what needs to happen is something internal.
Yeah, I didn't cry. Yeah, that means it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
Whereas like we have no idea. Things are happening on such a deep nuanced unconscious level. And sometimes just, yes, we're into somatic work, but a lot of times getting a greater awareness can shift so much within your body as well, and how you make decisions and the choices you make. And I share this story a lot because, and since you were talking about Hitler before, I think this is a great example. I was in a workshop 12 years ago with a couple mentors. I mentioned at the beginning that I learned about voice dialogue, the psychology of selves and the aware ego, Drs. Hal and Sidra Stone, and they do a lot of dream work there. And I was there with this training. It was a bunch of psychologists and me for some reason. This woman, she was older. She was sharing a dream that Hitler came to her in her dream, and the energy of Hitler, and it was really intense, and fucking the archetype of Hitler. Just think of, I think if we mention the name Hitler, everyone just goes, oh my God, it's Hitler. Okay. The collective, like there's a collective unconscious connection to that word, and conscious. Like, so she's talking about Hitler in the dream, and Hal goes, oh, okay, well, what if we took the image of Hitler, the energy of Hitler, and we put it in a big pot? Okay. One of those big pots that you make like soup with, or a stock with. Okay. And we boiled it down to get to this little reduced mixture. And then we took a little droppers full, like a little medicinal dropper. And we went in there and we took a little bit of that liquid. And he goes, what if we did that? And then we just put a little bit under your little homeopathic dose of the Hitler energy under your tongue. He goes, how would that help your life? And she like tuned in, and she was like, I'd be able to set boundaries. I'd assert my needs more. I'd speak more clearly. I'd step up for myself. You know what I mean? But from the complete opposite of within ourselves, we judge that energy is, oh my God, it's horrible. But if we were just to embrace the gifts, the qualities, this is where like anger too, people who repress their anger, it's similar to that. It's that energy, this vital life force energy that we repress. And yet if we were to just integrate a healthy dose of it, our life could change. So I think people building greater awareness around these things, around this stuff. Oh, why am I the way I am? Oh, let me look at my mom and my dad. Oh my God, my mom's that way. My dad's that way. Interesting. Now they can start introspecting and reflecting. Oh, when that person says that thing to me, I always react in this way. Oh my God, my mom, my dad did the same exact thing. Okay, why is that? Okay. Oh, wow. I just went to this teacher and he said this one. Oh, that relates to that. Oh, I just read this book. And they could bring in this process of like, oh, and maybe now I can maybe create a little bit more space between stimulus and response. And in that space, I can make a different choice, which is a great quote. One of my favorite quotes ever. I'm going to find it right now by Viktor Frankl. I just have to find it. It's here somewhere. Here it is. Hold up. And I love sharing this quote because it says so much about the journey that we're on, whether we're doing deep body work, healing work. We want to be able to build greater capacity and make new choices, and to look at ourselves in new ways, and to treat ourselves differently, and to treat others in a different way. And his quote is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So for any individual on the path of personal growth, they need to pay attention to their responses, to their reactivity, and whether or not they're doing this. They can cry all the time, but if they're responding in the same way to the same situations, are you moving the needle forward, or is it just spinning in space? And so like what you said before about our self-image and understanding our role in our environment and the choices and the decisions we make, this is very, very important. And I think that's going to highlight where we are on our healing journey.
Thank you, Yerasimos. That was very enlightening. We've had a powerful conversation, really.
Great, man.
Where are we at? All right, yeah. So just as a short closing, okay, I'm going to ask both of you to each share, if you can, what's the one thing that helped you get to where you are today?
One thing.
Oh man.
That's hard. But if I have to say one,
yeah, just
thing,
pick one. It doesn't have to be the one, because who knows much.
I mean, I'm just gonna say this is being exposed to the decades of research of Michael Tazarian, and that really supported me on many different levels, and really allowed me to step even more into my individual nature, and to learn about information from some of the great masters of the past. And so, you know, there's definitely things before and body work and this and that and all on the path, but there's like a thing that really has impacted me is just being exposed to different realms of thought and knowledge that has inspired me and has been fuel for introspection like nothing before.
That's a good one.
I feel like for me, it has to be body work, getting into the body, especially through like hands-on manipulative work within the body. Yeah, I think that for me was a huge breaking point. I think I shared this a bit in the Alpha Cast thing, but I was brought up in more of a spiritual community. And so, and it was very much about like transcending the body and releasing the body. And through the traumas of my childhood and everything, I was great at that. Like dissociation was my jam. I loved that. But I, again, like wasn't getting to those core things that were the issues. Until I went into the tissue of the body, until I got into the actual deep body work being done on me, and really having to come face to face with the pain in my body with a lot of, you know, dissociation, a lot of pushing things into the shadow. So yeah, body work, really getting into the body.
Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing that. I think it's also it's great for, you know, in order to give people a kind of direction if they may be wondering where to start or whatever. So on the one hand, some kind of research, right, that helps you understand a little bit more about the world, and on the other hand, returning to the body. For me, I guess I would have to say, for me, it was being open to allow life to happen, you know, to like trusting and having faith, you know, for me. And again, one says faith and somebody else understands whatever they understand, but having faith in that you are here and that I am here in this world for a reason. In this, not in this like poetic woo poo poo whatever thing, but it's like, why would you even exist if there wasn't a point to your existence? If there wasn't, even if it's just being that person who smiles to people on the street or whatever, and makes a small ripple or something like that, you know. For a long time I felt very alone, very like, what's the point? There's no meaning in this. But at the same time, something in me knew that there was a point. And starting to allow myself to trust in that is what opened me up through a kind of not expecting anything from the world, you know, like, oh, somebody owes me, or the universe owes me something. More like being open to what the universe is already giving me and bringing to me, and just trying to learn to let go of my selfish intentions or expectations of how life should be and the timing, etc. You know, like feeling very alone, you know, and suddenly you meet a spiritual teacher, and you meet the love of your life. And it's like, I wasn't expecting any of that. I was very depressed. I was at a very bad point in my life. But when I made that change, you know, of like, okay, I give this to you, universe, God, whatever. I remember I looked at the sky, and a flock of seagulls flew over me. It was the nighttime. A flock of seagulls flew over me, and I was like, oh, okay, then maybe that's kind of a sign, you know. I just let go stuff to a God I didn't believe in, to a universe I thought was like meaningless, and then a couple of days later, a whole adventure started to unwind, and here I am. And I think being open to life being magical is something that helped me become who I am, and I'm very happy to be here speaking with you guys and sharing your all your knowledge and your experience and your auras with me and with our audience. So this has been great. I would like to thank you guys for being here, for your time, and I would be very happy to do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and I wish you both the best. You wanna share the the Instagram? We're back to the material plane and to the world, to the business or whatever world.
Yeah.
But not just business, because what you guys do is beautiful. You know, this helping people in their spiritual journeys is like, that is the point. So please go ahead and share your stuff.
So my website is sophiefletcherphd.com, and then my Instagram is sophiefletcher.phd.
Yeah, I guess I'll share again the website for my podcast, and pretty much all the other stuff I'm involved in right now is hereforthetruth.com. And Here for the Truth, and part of our mission is really about empowering individuals to live life authentically on their own terms, you know, through the sharing, synthesizing, and embodiment of knowledge. And the other venture I have right now is the group coaching program, Rise Above the Herd, Awaken the Inner Hero. And it's www.riseabovetheherd.com.au. On the website too, you could also get access to, we wrote an ebook, 55 Signs of Low Self-Esteem for Truth Seekers. So you can go there to download that. But yeah, we have, just like you, man, we have cool guests on our podcast and sharing some really interesting information. And so come check us out.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for being there. This was such a powerful second half that I think I'm going to just go ahead and share it publicly on the YouTube this time. We touched on things that are triggering and hard to put into words even. And I think these kinds of conversations is what's gonna start helping all of us to integrate more and start to move forward as one, you know, in oneness, you know, instead of, okay, you can think what you think, you can believe what you believe, you can be in whatever point of your journey. Let's just respect each other. Let's just understand that, who knows, the different context, you know, people fight about everything, but they don't realize that they're all the same. Okay, so just to
I also just want to commend you for holding space for the conversation, because my wife knows me. I live for that. I love having juicy conversations. Like, I think the challenge is most people, they don't speak their minds, and so they lose the opportunity for a dynamic, like, conversation, you know, because it's like, okay, you say yours, okay, you know, I say my thing, you know what I mean? And this is where the juice happen. This is where creativity happens. This is where we can build new neural pathways, and we can like, oh wow, that's so interesting. Oh, he said that, and then he said that, and then he said that, and wow, I agree with some of what he said, but oh, I also agree with what someone he said. Oh, that's interesting. You know what I mean? And I think it's important.
People are afraid of clashing because of the potential ramifications after, but like you say, how can we learn and expand our views if we don't dive into the pool with others, right?
And this goes back to the whole expanded consciousness thing, to hold space for more of who we are. The more, if we can hold space, the more of who we are, we can have these conversations. You know, we can get passionate without being like, well, F you, you're wrong, I'm right. rah, you know, I'm unfollowing you. You're a horrible person. You know, like, okay, I just have a different opinion than you. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but that's important. Anyways, man, really
humanity back into it.
Yeah.
We're all different people. We're all different flavors. We're all literally, I mean, from a human design perspective, we're all literally designed differently. So then it's like, how can you accept and cherish and, you know, be with others? And it doesn't have to mean anything about yourself. It can, you can sort of take it in and especially I think one of the main virtues of people is open-mindedness.
Yeah. And this is why, and I had this conversation yesterday in my podcast. We interviewed Michael Azarian, which was great. Finally got him on the podcast. And we had this even conversation about the name of our podcast. Like we call it Here for the Truth. I don't say, and Michael brought this up, it's not here with the truth. I have the truth. I know, you don't know. It's like, I'm here for it. I'm here for the conversation. I'm here for the dialogue. It's a process. It's a journey. Sometimes you have to go down a rabbit hole and be like, oh, you know what? I'm wrong. You know, I was wrong there. And then I find something else. Oh, that makes more sense. This is where discernment comes in. This is where intuition comes in. This is where curiosity comes in. So to everyone on their journey and whoever's into truth, internal and external, I commend you. It's the road less traveled.
Yeah. And thinking about, just to wrap it up, thinking about quotes, you made me remember this one. I think it's by Ramdas. It says, and I like it very much, it simply says, listen to the silence between the words. And yeah. So, well, I had a great time. I hope you guys had a great time as well. And well, also hoping to meet soon. Okay.
Yeah, it's really nice to connect with you, man. Love your energy.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. Love you guys. Bye.
Take care, man.